horse portrait carving kits that I produce, this one, relatively speaking, is the simplest. The reason for that is that it's a straight-on profile of the horse, as opposed to the other horse portrait pendant carving kit that I produce, where the horse's head is turned against the body, which means that perspective comes into play. Whereas in this case, you don't have to worry so much about perspective, as it's flat on. For that reason, it's more appropriate probably for intermediate as well as advanced level carvers. Equally, a beginner could have a go. It's not to put you off, but it's definitely worth trying a few other kits first before you move on to this one, as just simply trying to get the muscle shape and the form correct to try and make it look as much like a horse as possible is quite challenging. So before you start, take a quick photo of the carving kit as it comes in the pack, and that way you've got a reference for when you need to draw the detail lines back on, as you'll be shaving those off in order to shape the pendant itself. So the first step is to cut out the two-dimensional shape of the horse, and you do that by removing all of the wood that sits outside of the outline of the horse. It's really up to you where you start with this piece, as there aren't any areas that are much more complicated than any other. A good place to start, or the most comfortable place to start, is down the sides. So removing the wood from the sides and slowly working your way into these lines. Turn it any which way you like. Just be careful of the ears, because obviously as you're sliding the knife down, it is quite easy to take off an ear. And obviously a horse without an ear doesn't necessarily look like a horse. So just take your time with that. When you do come down to meet the horse's ear, make cuts in from that direction before gently taking slices out in that direction. And that way you'll be able to cut finely into that angle just there, and you should prevent yourself from cutting the ear off. On the underside here, shaping beneath the pendant itself, just work your way across the grain very slowly. Take a bit out and wedge it out, take a bit out and wedge it out, until you've come all the way in here, and then work the knife down and again cut in from the opposite direction to remove pieces of wood. Go slowly, take small pieces and just work your way around. When you come in here under the horse's jaw, again what you'll need to do is make cuts in one direction and then cut the wood away from the opposite direction. So let's say you'd move the knife up there and then cut in from there to remove the waste wood, and repeat that process until you come all the way into this area here. Just go slowly and plan how the knife is going to move through the wood and how you're going to remove that wood by cutting the opposite direction. Once you've got the two-dimensional shape cut out, it's time to start shaping the horse itself, so creating the muscle and the bones and everything else that makes it texturally and in light look like a horse. So you can see with this horse I've got muscle coming down the neck and windpipe under the horse's jaw. You've got the side of the jawline, effectively the cheek of the horse, and then you've also got the shape of the nose, and then with the body you've got muscle and bone coming out where the neck joins the body. And it's slightly abstract because we're not going into too much detail with this part of the body because there isn't much there. Another reason why it's quite simple. So what you need to do is identify the lowest areas first, and then all of the different levels up from that. And you'll start with the lowest areas. So for example, down here where the pendant tapers off, and also here down the snout of the horse, and also here where the ears are separated. So you look to lower those areas first and then work level by level up from there to create the shape. Now in order to separate out the ears, what you'll notice, you'll have to look very carefully on the kit itself, but you'll notice that there's just visible is the ear that sits behind, and you'll just want to use the tip of your knife and score a line up between the two ears, and then gently make slicing cuts away to lower the rearmost ear back. Once you've got it halfway back, you can then start to separate out the ears by making very gentle cuts down alternately from different directions. So it's just the same as you did there, but this time you're going into the end grain being where the wood fibres have been cut. So take your time, because they don't behave necessarily in the same way that you'd expect as when you're working with the grain. Once you've got the three-dimensional shape as you want it, if you want to make it smoother or you want a finer finish on it, you can always use the sandpaper that's included in the kit. Start with the coarsest grain, which is the 120, work to the 180 and then up to the 240 to create a fine finish. Once you've done with sanding, get a paintbrush or something similar to dust off your workpiece to get rid of any remaining sort of wood dust or any particles from the sandpaper, because they can blunt the knife. Once you've got all that cleared, it's time to start working on the details. So refer back to the photograph that you took at the beginning and use that as a reference to draw in any details that you want to add. So for example, the nostrils, the mouth, the eyes, and that's about it really in terms of detail. So add as much or as little as you want, and then in order to create those details, again use the tip of the knife, score along the lines that you've drawn back in, and then either shave up to or away from those lines to create different levels of depth. So for example, with this, I've raised the eye socket away from other parts of the head, and the same goes for the nostrils, where I've carved in but also raised them relative to the surrounding areas. It's a good idea to refer to photographs of horses to give you an actual life reference, and that is a much more useful guide than simply basing it entirely on the lines. Because although the lines are based on a drawing of a horse, there's nothing better than using an actual reference photo, or better still, several reference photos, so different angles. Once you're happy with the details, all you need to do then is locate a balance point within the piece where it'll sit exactly as you want when it's worn. Take the small screw-in eyelet that came with as part of the kit and screw it in. With that then screwed in, simply thread the cord through and it's ready to wear. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed carving this piece, and yeah, happy carving.